Why, hello, and welcome to the Theories and Tales of a Tropical Fruit, a hub for a couple of us friends to share our creation, our expression, and have fun, really. Mainly focused around D&D at the moment, but who knows what's to come. Majority of us here met on a quiet wintry island, and as the snow began to fall, what better opportunity to introduce these guys to the world of D&D. And with that, the Final Expanse was born. Add a few years, add a few new faces, and here we are. So, I'm Brandon, creator, traveler, game master, human, all of that, and today I'm here to bring to you a little insight into my world and our story, the Final Expanse. So, I'd like to welcome you to the world of Saladra, or more commonly referred to by its inhabitants as the Final Expanse. Tales speak of Saladra once being a land of arcane wonder and divine spectacle. The gods walk the material plane with their mortal creations, both thriving through the benefits bestowed upon one another, growing to new heights, mortals and deities alike. But growth does not bear one direction. Ideals began to sprout and blossom every which way within the forest of consciousness. Mortals began to reach new arcane prowess, and started to rely more on themselves opposed to the gods. Many gods saw this as progress and the purpose of mortal life to begin with, but just as many did not. They found this threatening and belittling to their divinity. The pantheon argued and fought and eventually split in two. The deities of light wanted to protect mortals and their evolution, while the gods of treachery sought to wipe the slate clean and start anew. So began the divine war for Saladra. Gods and their champions fought alongside mortals across the planes of existence for so long that they forgot the beauty of the very world that they were fighting for. Eventually, through powerful artifacts sculpted by the gods of treachery, the final attack on mortal life began, the Great Consumption. Jet black arcane stone began to petrify, poison, and kill the world from the northern and southern points, crashing across the lands like a sea of death and darkness, consuming anything and everything it met. The deities of light were left with no other option if they were to save the children they had created. Combining all of their power, they performed a mass banishment on all divine beings, themselves included, marking all deities unable to return to the material planes. In doing so, though, the consumption was stopped, but the sheer power of the divine magic tore the very land from the core of Saladra, killing millions in the hope of saving enough, just enough, to let mortal life continue. Now, the year is 1221 PC, post-consumption. Nearly all of Salandran landmass is gone. What is left floats within the clouds, held at bay by the core's gravitational pull, caged between the jet-black jaws of death which haunts the world's past. To the northeast of this land stands the great city of Draconia, the only city to survive what transpired hundreds of years ago, and the only landmass still connected to the world's core. Home to the proud and knowledgeable Draconian Empire, the Mountain of Bahamut and Draconia alike are often seen as the starting point of the New Age, and is currently ruled by House Bolgrave. To the northwest floats the Ochrys Kingdom, the first large kingdom to unite and rise to power some 600 years ago under King Palladia, whose bloodline still rules it to this day. The center of innovation and advancements, as said by many, mainly thanks to the invention of airships, and, as of a few years ago, the flying city of Cressa, the Iron Haven. To the southwest lies the wild land of Uclaw. Scattered with independent factions, this land is a mix of freedom and danger. Until recently, that is. The Order of Asylum has begun to brutally conquer the country, using one of the greatest creations in this era, the Warforged. The east is home to the untamed Isles of Draythane, better known as the Bitter Rift, home to monsters and great dangers and pirates thought to be even worse than that. Just south of that lies the Blossom Shards, a mystical and magical land packed with wonder and more danger than its former. And with that little taste, I'd like to welcome you to our story, which began upon the Sunbird, an airship departing for Draconia. Axoreus, a heavy metal bard on a search for his recently kidnapped love. Forthine, a being forged for war, finding what it means to be alive and dealing with a crippling addiction all the while. And Galilea, a Lightkeeper warrior tasked with delivering an important artifact to her peers in Draconia. After boarding and taking a liking to one another, their journey was cut short when an ambush plucked them from the material plane and trapped them in a prison dimension, the Chained Abyss. They worked together, made allies, dealt with the dangers of this layer of the abyss, eventually escaping, but not before losing Galilea and releasing the very demigod the Chained Abyss was built to hold, Dracoda the Abandoned. A lost champion of the Divine War who was locked away after attempting to ascend to godhood. As they returned to the Final Expanse, so was the feathered monstrosity released to wreak havoc upon the world. So, lost in the bitter rift, Axel and Forthine met Grin, an abomination with a kind heart created out of twisted divine amusement. The trio found themselves in the lost city of Ukeri, helping to free its people from the curse bestowed upon them by the powerful hag that now resided there. Not without the help of the returning, more powerful Galilea, that is. After celebrating their success, Galilea left on her new journey while the others were guided by the ambitious white-furred monkey man known as Volker. And within a few days, they found themselves in the free city of the Cove of Crosses. It was here they learned that the week spent in the Chained Abyss was over a decade back here in the Final Expanse. Much had changed now. Axoreus was now the lost prince of Draconia, and the Western Expanse was torn by war, thanks to the Order of Aslan's ruthless conquest. Nonetheless, the Cove of Crosses seemed to hide from the conflicts and events deep within Drathane. The questionable enchanter and drug dealer, talking rats, and a fantastic heist made their time fun and lively there, until they were summoned by Arturo, a powerful mage and a member of the wizard collective known as the Pillars of the World, whom, after hearing about their skills and exploits, offered them a job and a very pretty reward. So they accepted and were teleported to the cold Tepris Mountains in northern Okris, where they were tasked with dismantling a tiefling slave mine. After luring a duo of frost giants into storming the prison camp, as well as simultaneously initiating an uprising from the captives, chaos ensued and the mine was brought to the ground, leaving them victorious and the tiefling slaves free. After that, our adventurers headed south, passing through the marble forest before reaching the industrial city of Merkel. They explored the city, all the while hiding the true form of a Warforged companion, of course, before being approached by a warrior Loxodon, whom introduced themselves as Mr. Smiles, and invited them to trial for the House of the Hunt, an independent guild of bounty hunters and monster slayers. So, under the sponsorship of Mr. Smiles, they aced the trials with flying colours, and were invited to join as their newest hunters. They were eventually given their first bounty also, a valuable and intelligent Goliath whom had escaped a slave camp up in the mountains after a rebellion broke out. Who knows how that happened? They were tipped off that their target was heading east, so our adventurers set off towards the town of Archmore, located on the far eastern coast of the Okris Kingdom. But as the further east they went, the stranger the world got. Something was off. And upon being saved by a group of warriors led by the great Sir Matiko, they learned that Archmore had been ravished by cultists and abominations. They were begged to help, and led to the refugee camp after accepting, full with the survivors of Archmore, including their target, Gorberot. However, their forces were strengthened, and the battle to reclaim Archmore began. With their very bounty by their side, as well as the pirate El Tigre, They were tasked with finding out what strange happenings were occurring underneath the city, revealing that they were cultists of the abandoned god himself, Rakoda. Entering the ancient temple of Rakoda deep beneath the town, they were met with none other than the demigod they released in the first place. Transporting them into the abandoned lands, a demi-dimension of Rakoda's make, an epic battle brought pain and betrayal and death and victory. For Rakoda was eventually defeated by the lightning breath of the Bard Prince of Draconia. The small strings of life that our party held onto was enough to help them feel safe when they were left back in the ancient temple once more, now with a powerful artifact. And they thought it would be an excellent idea to pop this world-altering object of power into an interdimensional space. And their bag of holding erupted and vanished, leaving both Grin and Gorberon lifeless on the ground. With nothing they could do, and afraid of Forthine being discovered by the Okris army as a warforged, them and Inaeko, a mutual friend of Artulo's, snuck onto the airship that he had arrived on originally, before any celebration of their achievement or consequences of their past. And so, our story continues upon the White Whisper, heading for Draconia once more. Axel Reyes and Forthine set off on a new journey, unaware of the fates they will be entangled with next. So, if you want to find out what happens, make sure to stay up to date with all the links below. Peace.